Welcome back to another edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket. I'm your host, Peter Delapenna, and on this episode, I welcome Crystal Zins, cricketer from Minnesota, who was part of the USA Women's Southwest Regional Squad at the recent USA Cricket Women's Regional Championship down in Texas. I'm sure a lot of you who follow the podcast and follow US cricket in general may have come across Crystal Zins' name because she was the player who was the subject of a social media post I made on Facebook that went viral over an incident that happened in the tournament there in Texas at the USA Cricket Women's Regional Championship. But I wanted to get a chance to have Crystal come on the show to give her a chance to tell the world a hell of a lot more about herself and her passion for cricket, because I know from talking to Crystal in Texas and talking to her since the events in Texas that she's got a deep, deep passion for cricket, and she has so much to share about the game and contribute to the game, a contribution that maybe she didn't get a proper chance to demonstrate in Texas, but given the right opportunity, I think Crystal is somebody who's got a hell of a lot to offer cricket, whether that's in Minnesota or anywhere else in America or the world for that matter, and she shares a lot of that passion in the interview that I did with her and why cricket is such a great game, and Crystal is a great example of that. So you'll hear more from Crystal in a few minutes, but before I get to the interview with Crystal, I want to remind everybody that the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast is presented by DreamCricket. The DreamCricket store can help you fill up all your cricket kit requirements, anything you need, bats, helmets, gloves, pads, jerseys. Go to DreamCricketStore.com and get 15% off your first order. DreamCricket Store also offers free shipping on all orders over $200. So go to www.DreamCricketStore.com now to take advantage of that great offer today. The Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket is also sponsored by Moosa Cricket Stadium, the first turf wicket facility in the state of Texas. For more information, go to www.moosastadium.com. That's MOOSA Stadium.com. Moosa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas. And also, the podcast is sponsored by Crickbuster. Crickbuster is an ICC-designated official travel agent for the 2022 ICC Men's T20 World Cup in Australia. So if you're a fan living in the USA and you're looking to go to Australia this October for the T20 World Cup, and you need match tickets, flights, hotels, stadium tours, or anything else you want to do in terms of sightseeing down under, Crickbuster is your one-stop shop for all of your touring plans. So visit www.crickbuster.com today to begin planning your trip for the T20 World Cup in Australia. And now, the interview with Crystal Zins, but just a brief note at the start, there were a few connection issues during the course of the interview, which caused some audio glitches, so if you do come across them at times, that's the reason why. But otherwise, 99% of the interview was smooth sailing, so here it is, the interview with Crystal Zins. Today's edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket, I'm welcomed by player from the Southwest Regional Squad in the recent USA Cricket Women's Regional Championships. She plays cricket in Minnesota. Crystal Zins. Crystal, welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
It's good to have another Italian on the podcast. You wouldn't know it from your last name, but from talking to you, you said your maiden name Gagliardi.
Gagliardi.
So we've got some more Italian flavor to the podcast. Very exciting. For me, at least. I don't know how many other Italians there are. The Venn diagram between cricket lovers and Italians, it might be like this small in terms of the Venn diagram crossover, but I'm sure they do exist out there somewhere, Crystal.
Shout out to all those Italian players. We need more.
For people who don't know much about you and your cricket, you're from Minnesota, born and raised in Minnesota. Believe it or not, there is cricket in Minnesota. I know because I've seen it. There was actually a USA Cricket Regional Western Conference Championship back in 2009 in St. Paul, Minneapolis, which was, I think, one of the best run tournaments I've ever been to. And the cricket community out there is actually quite strong. It's not necessarily as big as some other parts of the country, but it is quite robust for that part of the world. So tell people, if you can, how the cricket community is from your perspective in that part of the world in Minnesota.
Well, I think it's developing, it's growing. I didn't come into it obviously until about 3 years ago. Started playing about 2 years ago. I know COVID kind of got into the way of that a little bit, but you know, we have a huge presence, young and old. Even here in my hometown of Woodbury, we have men's leagues, women's leagues, but mostly tennis ball leagues. and leather ball, at least for the women, is fairly small right now. And so if we want to play, we usually have to play the younger boy teams or obviously, as you know, travel. And then with the weather, we're pretty limited to the summertime and then, 6 months, 6+ months of cold winter and all that. So we're reduced to indoors. So getting playtime, getting field space has been a challenge for us, and then competing with other teams with space. So I know that we have a lot of people in our group that are in the process of expanding, looking for facilities, looking to build facilities. I mean, from my knowledge, I think we only have one cricket pitch. We used to have like 2 or 3, but it's pretty reduced, and that's in Minneapolis. So a lot of us are traveling near and far to get together. So like my team, for example, we come from all over the Twin Cities and just to play. So, but we're hungry to play. Always out there whenever we can, try to schedule spots and then working around weather. But the passion is definitely there, young and old. So, I mean, you see the kids out there playing and they're just rock stars, and it's a phenomenal experience. But yeah, when I go down south, it's, I tell everyone, I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. You guys have so many options. Oh, if this place is taken, we can just go over here, and it's only 20 minutes away. It is what it is.
You're in Woodbury. Okay, you
Yep.
mentioned Woodbury. So how far is that from Minneapolis, St. Paul downtown?
With traffic, maybe 45 to an hour, depending. I mean, we're in construction season, so depends on which way you go. But sometimes about 45 minutes. The way I drive, maybe a half hour. But but it is what it is. Sometimes we'll carpool and we'll get there that way.
So what's the closest cricket field to you then from Woodbury to
It's
where you are?
Minneapolis, 45 minutes or so.
Well, now, what cricket club are you affiliated with now?
Right now it's MTBC, which is just Minnesota Tennis Ball Cricket League. And we're finishing up. We have a tournament this weekend, our final tournament for first place. I play for Team Victors, and we're playing Phoenix, which is like our sister team. So we have a big team. We split up, and then we play each other. This year, we only had 4 women's teams because attendance was pretty low. A lot of folks were traveling this year just to take that opportunity to finally get out and see family. And because like last year, I think we had like 10 teams. And then after that, we run stats, and we do an auction. So based on player ranking, and we split up the teams, and we're playing for MTPL, and that will be coming up next week, and that'll just be a weekend tournament. So we kind of shuffle the deck a little bit with players, and so that's going to be super exciting. And we play under the lights. The men's team, on the other hand, I think they got over 180 players. Women, I think we have maybe 50 or so that are playing. And here I am recruiting. I'm like, come on, we got to play leather ball. We got to play leather ball. A lot of folks play tennis ball beautifully, but for some folks, it's kind of a scary transition. But once you get your hands dirty, it's fantastic.
Now, you say only 4 teams, and then you said only 10 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Only. In most parts of the country, Crystal, I'm sure you're aware, having traveled around the country now for various events in Texas and I believe Missouri and some other places. Most places don't even have only 1 team for women's cricket. Most places are scratching and clawing and tapping into any sources they know, or they might find people who are just interested in any sports whatsoever to try and lure them into cricket. So the fact that there's only 4 teams or only 10 teams, I think people would be shocked at, considering the major hotbeds of cricket really are the San Francisco Bay Area for women's cricket anyway. San Francisco Bay Area, New York, New Jersey, and a little bit in Maryland, and then you might have a pocket in certain parts of Texas. But generally speaking, there's very, very little women's cricket around the country. So the fact that you're saying there's only 50 players in Minnesota, I think may shock a lot of people that, again, cricket is that strong in that part of the world, but in particular, women's cricket. So what is driving all this women's cricket recruitment? Is it you, Crystal, or is it somebody else or some other group of people that's making a lot of waves happen up in that part of the world?
Okay, first of all, when I say only, I guess I'm a little greedy. I want to see more. I think if you have a great pool of people, you can really enhance your competition and experience. And it's tennis ball. So, I mean, when you break it down to leather ball, it's under 15 or so from, when we get into our practices, we don't have enough to play a game. So it's not me, definitely not me, but I wish it was. I talk about it everywhere I go. It's, my friends and family, it's my topic of conversation to the point where they probably get sick of hearing about it. But the women that we play with, they're phenomenal, and they have a tight community, and it's mostly word of mouth. I mean, we try to get there on social media and things, but it's more just groundswell, just getting together, oh, you've got arms, let's go play. So let's just do this. So that's kind of how that goes. And then, there's a lot of folks that, come from other countries where it's big there, and they come here and they find out that we have it. So they reach out. We have a lot of girls that used to play. They come in for the first time in many years, and maybe a little rusty, but it's a big thing to see how quickly these women are developing and how competitive they all are. And it's not competitive in a bad way. It's kind of like a personal competition within themselves, and we don't play just for ourselves. We play for everyone, and everybody pretty much knows everybody. So when we're playing other teams, we're all friends. Obviously, during a game, there's that competition, but we know everyone. So it's kind of like a big family reunion in a way. Yeah.
You said big family reunion. Are there any other Gagliardis playing
For me?
for Minnesota?
No. All my family are sporting activities. My brother, for example, he's baseball. He was a baseball player his whole life. Baseball, football, hockey. My girls are in figure skating and soccer. So I am trying to get my 6-year-old to play. I mean, she picked up the bat right away, and she's just all in. She's got that competitive drive almost to a fault, or it's too competitive. But yeah, like my brother, again, he's about 17 years my senior. And when he used to play, he was kind of, we have a St. Paul Saints, we got a team underneath. It's kind of like it's like a farm league where he would play. So when he was in his 20s or so, I'd go to his games, and his coach would pay me a quarter for every ball I would bring back from the outfield. So I've been chasing balls since I was 5.
Now, you said you've got daughters, plural, or kids, plural. You said you got a 6-year-old, and then I believe you said in previous conversation I had with you, you got a teenager who's the one who's involved in figure skating. So how many kids do you have?
Well, total I have 5, but I have 3 of my own, and then my husband has 2. So, but we have 5 girls, 3, 6, 22, 23, and 24. Yeah.
So they keep you busy.
They keep me busy. Yeah. And then my niece is in town from Florida, so she's staying with us, and she's an Air Force kid. She's doing those things, going to college. So I'm kind of a mom, a mentor, and an aunt. I'm all the things: financial planner, housekeeper. I wear many hats. So yeah,
many hats.
Yes,
it sounds like it. So as somebody who was born and raised in Minnesota, and families have been involved in all these other sporting activities, how did you first get drawn to cricket? And when did you first get drawn to cricket? You said it was about 3 years ago. So how and when did this come to be?
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago. I was working at a yoga studio, and I was teaching prenatal yoga. Numbers in prenatal are pretty low because it's people come in for a short period of time and then they're out. And one of my students, Kalavani, she would take my class, and I think she liked my class so much she invited her friends, and they came along, and we had some pretty good classes together. It was pretty fun, and I know that her family had went back to India for a little while, so I just kind of reached out to her, said, hey, if you need anything from me, give me a holler, whatever it is, I don't care. And so I gave her my information. I don't usually do that, but I just wanted to reach out and be available for her if she needed anything, and I think probably sometime after she had her baby, because I know that she talked about cricket just a little bit, and she's super passionate, obviously, about it. And she asked if I wanted to play, and I said, well, I know nothing of this sport. I mean, I really, really didn't. I mean, I went back home and I Googled it and saw some YouTube videos and things like that. And it's like, sure, why not? It sounded like fun. Went out there and just started practicing with those guys. And, of course, they asked me, like, do you have a history of like playing softball or baseball? And I played a little bit, but not a whole lot. I mean, I'm just kind of a multi-athlete. I like to play sports. I'll play anything except for like maybe bowling or golf. But so, yeah, I joined her team, and we just kind of rolled into it. And it was just kind of 0 to 60, so to speak, because the second you get out there, you just kind of get into it. And I will say that the experience itself, the developmental experience in the beginning was, I wouldn't say it was tough, but it was challenging in the fact that for every activity that we would do would result in some sort of constructive criticism. So if you bowled or if you batted or anything, it's like, well, do this, do this, do this. That's great, but list of things of what you could do. So there wasn't any time to kind of enjoy the process. It was pretty intense. But looking back to that intensity of that constant, I don't want to say criticism, that one day it just kind of clicked for me anyway. And I really learned the joy of repetition in the game and the dynamic aspects of the game. And it's just not something as simple as you play your position and you just kind of go with it. You really have to learn the players. You have to learn everybody's style. You have to learn all the positions. And it was just dynamic with that. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at. And I'm still learning, and and I don't want to forget too that it wasn't just her coaching me, it was the entire team. And then other teams that we were playing with, you're constantly getting this feedback. And there was really no time for rest. So, and we're still receiving that as well. And then of course we kind of run into the one season, then we play another season, we play for a different team, and then all of a sudden we're playing Viva tournament, which is a charity tournament. And that really turned up the dial for me because we're playing co-ed and I'm playing with men. And all of a sudden it went from like 30 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour because the pace was different. And that aspect kind of clicked with me too. And it was more of you can play defensive, you can play offensive, and learn your different styles. And I really enjoyed that aspect too. And it appeals to all my desires. Like I love running. I like to be fast. I like to be competitive. And if it's not there, if it's kind of a slow, boring game, I just kind of lose interest. And cricket definitely hasn't been that at all for me.
There's a lot to unpack there. I'll start with the end. I'll start with the end.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many Americans I've come across who, when they actually get to experience cricket firsthand, this is one of the things that sticks out in terms of, in their own words, it goes against the stereotype where you get somebody who's actually physically played cricket or gone to a cricket game and experienced it in person rather than through somebody trying to explain it to them using forks and knives and spoons and salt and pepper shakers and that kind of thing, where you actually get there and experience it. And almost every single person who's an American says, this is a fast game. It's a fast paced game. It moves quickly. There's very little dead time. You get 20 to 25 seconds in between deliveries. So there's always constant motion. And then when the ball is in play as well. And that goes so far in the polar opposite direction of the stereotype that keeps getting promoted that cricket is a slow game, cricket takes too long. And yes, in terms of the duration of when the game starts to when the game finishes, yes, the duration in that context of time and space, yes, it's a long game. But you talk to people who play, especially, again, the Americans I've come across who are exposed to it for the first time, and their instinctive response, and you've said it again, which again fascinates me, and I think it helps to kind of break down a lot of the stereotypes. It's a fast game. I want to get you to kind of go a little bit further in depth. Why do you feel it's a fast game and that it drew your interest from that standpoint?
Okay, so I'll go back to when I used to play softball many, many years ago, being a left fielder, and it was just daunting. You're just sitting out there waiting for a ball, waiting and waiting, looking at the clock. And it just, okay. But I do want to say that I have been watching Little League on TV while I'm at the gym. They got it rolling on ESPN. And I do feel that, the Little League girls softball has upped their game tremendously as well. I mean, I'm watching these kids play and they're just going out there. I mean, they're going full bore and they're phenomenal athletes. So I don't want to take away from like that sport. However, with cricket, to me being fast paced, I just constantly think about the dynamics of the game itself. The field's constantly changing, who's bowling, the batting style, if they're lefty or righty. And it's just, you constantly have to be checking in. If you're not checked in, you're going to miss something. And you really have to be 2 steps ahead of the game with what's going on, reading players, reading the field in that aspect as far as fielding goes. When it comes to batting, I have my favorite players. I mean, they're all my favorite, but you really get to build a relationship with, say, another batsman or batter. and we read each other, we talk to each other the entire time, and it's kind of a competition within itself. It's like, okay, can you get 50? If you get 50, I'll get 51. So I mean, you can kind of break down within it and create like competitions within a game itself. I mean, it could be a slow pace, it could be a very leisurely game, but I tend to want to kind of up the level a little bit and really just kind of be proactive in that game. And you have that opportunity with cricket. Whereas other sports, especially when you go higher level, if you have an athlete, a professional level athlete, they are so good that they can relax a little bit. When you look at like minor league, for example, or even kids, I mean, they're throwing themselves out there. Not that a high level performing athlete wouldn't, but they're all in. And I really appreciate that aspect of it and in the pace that brings.
One of the other things you said that caught my ear, joy of repetition. What do you mean by the joy of repetition in cricket?
You know what? I think that's for anything, but especially for cricket, for accuracy and consistency, you really have to have that relationship with that repetitive nature. When I first started, I was really hesitant because I didn't want to have bad form. I didn't want to learn something in a way that was not correct so that I would repeat that. So as I was continued to be coached by other individuals, working on my form, working on my bowling form, working on my batting form, watching videos over and over and over again of just how to pick up the bat, how to hold the bat, and how to position your foundation, you know, just every aspect. It's just that constant repetition, working on that muscle memory. And, you know, that's where a lot of these young kids really kind of excel because some kids might have experienced that early on so that they don't have any bad habits. So when I played basketball, it was me laying on the bed with the ball, throwing it 100 times every day, again and again and again. But it became, I don't want to say an addiction, but just this itch that I had to keep scratching to get it again and again and again. And then once you're in that zone, you're kind of unstoppable. And that's why, again, I like the fast pace of the game because you can get into that groove pretty quickly. You don't really have time to think. I know that some individuals might have a certain ritual of things to get to that, and I might develop some of those rituals as well. But overall, it's to getting into those repetitive things to kind of fall back on. So if you're not having a good day, those things are right there. You can just kind of go into your toolbox and, okay, what do I got to do? And then boom, you go for it.
Among those things, again, you got into cricket about 3 years ago, you said, so you would have been 36, 37 thereabouts.
Yeah, I'm old.
So, but I mean, I got into cricket when I first started playing. First time I ever picked up a bat and a ball was when I was 21. And so there's a different approach you need to take, at least from my perspective, when you're an adult. It's a lot easier to adjust to things when you're a kid and you can adapt and you haven't developed bad habits, or you haven't had to undo bad habits, or you haven't quite hit a point where you've maxed out in terms of your athleticism that you develop over the course of being a kid up into your teenage years. And if you don't have that athleticism by the time you're 16, 17, 18, then you're probably never going to develop it. And some people might argue if you don't have that athleticism by the time you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you're never going to develop it. You got to get it very, very young. But having played all the sports that you played growing up, you have that athleticism to be able to transfer these things to cricket, even learning it for the first time as an adult. So I'm curious, for you, what was the easiest thing for you to try and learn in terms of cricket skills, whether it was a skill thing or a rules-based thing? What was the easiest thing? And what was the most challenging thing that you had to adapt to, whether from a skills-based learning mechanism or a rules-based learning mechanism?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's kind of hard to answer because I love it all. It's just, I'm pretty hungry for every position that I play. I after playing in Dallas or in Houston, fielding wasn't my favorite, but then that kind of really sparked a thing for me. So I like that now too. So I don't know. And that gave me some good hunger right there. But batting for me, that's just pretty easy. I have with the sports and my training up until now, I feel all those things kind of came into play when you to like, young kids having that athleticism for boxing, for example, you can't teach aggression. Either you have it or you don't. There might be some kids that want to like get into like martial arts or something, and they might be able to do the form well, but when it comes to sparring, they might not have that extra drive. And some things are innate, some things you can learn. But at the end of the day, some things are just how you develop. And when you say 6 to 8 years old, I understand that. Like my 6-year-old, she has this ability to pick up pretty much any sport and just kind of go with it. She just has that drive. Also, the ability to fail and how you take that failure, you can either just kind of break down or it pushes you even farther. So she's a great kid to watch skate. You fall, you get back up. And the coaches will say, yep, that's a big part right there. It's not the falling, it's what you do after the fact. So that mindset is such a big key. I've always had to try extra hard. I'm 4'11", I'm a girl. I kind of get overlooked a little bit. So I always had to do things to stand out. And so I appeal to my strengths. I know Coach Jalal, he's like, control the controllables. That was his kind of his mantra a little bit. And so I think I had that for a very long time. It's okay, well, what's in my control? Well, I'm fast. I can get down. I can do this. It's like working those strengths. So batting again, I'm pretty strong in the foundational aspects. I have a good hip drive, so I can kind of really crank it. And then just working on form. So sometimes it's just learning those skills within it and just to fine tune. Even my batting has been getting better over the time, working on form, not just strength. Because you don't have to be very strong to play very well and use those strategies. But everything all together, it just can get explosive. Bowling, on the other hand, I'm a lefty. I bat right. I am a lefty. So it's been difficult for me to learn because all of my coaches are righties and I don't have a whole lot of lefty bowlers to kind of in person watch. So a lot of that has been watching things online and then researching slow motion and then just getting in front of a mirror and just kind of pretending I know what I'm doing. And I'll just do that over and over and over again. So I'm still working on that piece. But I think if I fine tune that, I can be a little bit more competitive in that respect. So I guess bowling would be the more difficult one. And that's just my left-handedness talking. But I know the strength is there. Oh, and then also just running. I'm fast. I was probably one of the fastest ones on the team. and I think that's a big growth opportunity for girls coming up is that athleticism and that piece of training. And I think there's a lot of growth opportunities there because I did do some research, overseas in England and in Australia, they have these training camps and it's not just how they play, it's how they train. And that repetition of certain movements to build strength, explosive movements. And that's kind of how I train back at home when I'm at the gym. I do a lot of strength training, explosive training, box jumps. Can't stand them, but they are so good.
Now, you touched on something there that I find really interesting. I've heard a lot of other players in the past talk about, they learned elements of cricket from watching YouTube, or they got sucked in and kind of self-taught various things about their own game from YouTube, but they're still able to apply a lot of the things in person. They get enough in-person support, coaching support, and developmental support, even if YouTube is that initial spark. But you said something that it really struck me there. The fact that you're left-handed as a bowler has made it really, really challenging because, as you said, being a left-handed bowler is unique in most places, but especially in Minnesota, I would imagine. And so even if you're trying to learn things on YouTube, there is nobody locally, and there's very few people probably nationally who would even think of something that's specialized, that you can't just have a generalized bowling coach. There's places now at the elite level that have started to take on, you've got fast bowling coaches versus spin bowling coaches. You've got a very specific spin bowling coach, or even say a leg spin coach. Even just having a spin bowling coach isn't enough. You've got to have a leg spin coach versus a finger spin coach. But for you to say, I'm left arm bowler, I don't have anybody who can teach me the proper mechanics of bowling left arm. And even if you look at other sports, I mean, how many quarterbacks are there in the NFL who are left-handed or throw lefty? It's very, very rare. You see it a lot more in baseball, but in football, of the left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL, I think Tua Tagovailoa is the only one right now who's starting across all the teams in the NFL for the Dolphins. And historically, I'm thinking Steve Young and Michael Vick, and I don't really know too many others off
Vic,
the top of
yeah.
my head, So it's very
Yeah.
unusual in that regard.
And hockey.
And hockey, yeah. I mean, you don't have many left-handed goalies. It's almost exclusively a right-hand dominant. Your strong hand is your stick hand as a goalie, and your left hand is your catching hand as a goalie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all those kinds of things. What solutions do you try to come up with then to try and compensate for that lack of in-person coaching to be able to try and get you to where you want to be?
Well, nobody back home wants to play catch with me, at least within my household. And I tried getting my neighbors to play, and they want to play a little bit, but they don't do what I want them to do. So it really is reduced to me throwing a ball at a wall or a net. I did buy some soccer nets, and I'll throw into that. So it's basically just finding my own personal form, getting my own personal feel, and then just working towards that consistency. So it's just that repetition of again and again and again. But I do need to get some more balls. I have 2 right now that I play with. Otherwise, I got a whole bunch of tennis balls. So I got that. I wish our stores, had a good inventory, but everything is pretty much online. So I could be doing more, but I'm doing the best I can with what I got. And it's just been kind of busy with just our other leagues. In the back of my mind is like, I should be playing more. I should be practicing more every day. And, we got goalies that, I think of hockey, you got these guys that won the Stanley Cup, and you get to see how they bring the cup back to their hometown and their first net that they've ever had. And it's just like this shoddy device or whatever, but you don't really need a whole lot. I mean, it's just tattered and everything else. But I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, you can have some great players with really limited resources. You just do with what you have. So for me, it's just, I got a couple balls. If I'm not consistent, I got to run and go get them. So it's kind of a self-made punishment. It's like, well, if I didn't do it right, I got to go back and get it. Otherwise, and that was the same thing with basketball. If I was practicing my shots, because I love that game as well. If I was consistent on my shots, that ball would come right back to me, and that was kind of the reward. And then if I just kind of stunk really bad, balls out into the street or something like that, I got to run and get it, and there's my punishment. So I create these like internal drills, and that's kind of the best that I can work with right now. And I think that's what anybody can do, but I think there's a more effective way in doing it. But that's kind of what I got. So yeah, and that's just, and the other thing, like with the videos, it's just, okay, I'm watching the guys form. Coach Jalal did give me a little bit of tips. Charles back here, my leather ball coach, he's given me some tips, and it's just again and again and again. My habits are kind of like, I try to throw like a baseball, so I got my elbow out. So he's just really helping me correct my form a little bit there. So some of it's on me, it's just being a good listener. And then the other part is just kind of having that mind-body connection.
You mentioned Charles Peterson, who's one of the people who's up there in Minnesota. I want to ask about him in a minute, but to kind of wrap up the point about the technical aspects, just from hearing you talk, you seem very, very analytical. You've got a very deep vision in terms of how you're approaching this. Where does this kind of desire to have this analytical mindset come from? I mean, is this something that you apply universally to all sports and all endeavors, or is it something that you're particularly focused on for cricket purposes because, again, you're trying to play catch up, haven't missed all this time over the course of your life, and you've got to kind of play catch up at warp speed to kind of catch up to where everybody else is, or is there some other reason behind it?
I wish I knew. This approach has been there all the time. I love learning new things. I like taking up stuff. And the competition within myself in general is more me versus me. What can I do? Can I do better? Can I push myself to the limits? Again, with any sport or anything like that. I mean, right now I like to do powerlifting, and it's like, well, if I can do 250, I can do 300. And I don't know where that comes from, but it's just like, well, if this person can do it, why can't I? And sometimes it's a hard life to live because of that drive that I have. But a lot of it is just, it's always been there. I kind of like to learn. If I learn something, I want to know everything about it as much as I can. And I just kind of like a geek that way. I just research and research and research. How is this person approaching it? How is that person doing it? If I understand more of that, then I can understand a little bit about myself and how I can kind of communicate competitively with those things. With cricket, again, when I say dynamic, there is the competition aspect within myself. and for me to do the best that I can. But also there's this responsibility that I have. For example, Kali, the one that recruited me initially, her team, and then moving into other teams, and then their family members, even they're coaching us. And then Charles, for example, with the leather ball, I feel that I kind of owe it to them a little bit, where if they're giving me information, if they're giving me instruction, if they're giving me their time, that I feel that I owe it to them to perform and to do my best. So I feel that their time is valuable. So going back into the dynamic of the game itself, it's not just me playing for myself, it's me playing for others and what I can do for them, and to show them that their time hasn't been wasted, because I've had so many people, around me that has carried me along the way this far in this short period of time. So it's just that constant cycle. And then the harder it gets, or the better I do, everybody else is kind of coming along with me. They're performing, they're developing. So the bar just keeps raising higher and higher and higher. So once you think you reach a peak, you're like, oh, okay, we're cool. Nope. We got to raise that bar a little bit higher. Okay, now you can micromanage it here. You can do this better. You can do that better. And so that appeals to me as well, because that kind of keeps me going and keeps me checked in. So, and that I guess is the reward, to kind of constantly move up that ladder of skill and performance.
One of the other things too, you said, just to, I guess, wrap up this point about technical aspects of cricket and why technique is of interest. You said you're 4'11".
Yeah.
And historically, some of the best players in cricket history are some of the shortest in stature, especially on the men's side. Somebody like Sachin Tendulkar, Don Bradman, Brian Lara, they're all in the 5'4" to 5'6", 5'7" range.
They're still taller than me.
They're still taller than, yes, that is true. That is true. But again, even some of the current women's players in England and Australia and elsewhere, you don't have to be big to be great in cricket. Whereas, you look at basketball, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, they're all 6'8" or taller. Michael Jordan, 6'6", 6'7", and even the baseball players, to modern day, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani is I don't think a lot of people appreciate how big Shohei Ohtani is. AL MVP last year, this guy from Japan who is the next Babe Ruth, who's pitching and hitting home runs. I saw a game, I was in Oakland last year and saw the A's play the Angels, and the thing that stood out to me about Shohei Ohtani when I saw him in person, I couldn't believe how big he is. He stands 6'4", 6'5".
6'4".
He's a big unit, and you can understand where he gets all this power from as a hitter and then pitching as well. You don't see very many pitchers in baseball who are successful who are under 6 foot tall. I think Pedro Martinez in recent memory might be one of the few who's kind of in the Hall of Fame class, and Tim Lincecum for the Giants, who won 2 Cy Young Awards, I believe, and won a couple World Series for the Giants, but his career flamed out pretty quickly because just his body broke down pretty quickly as somebody who was, I think, 5'9", 5'10". Cricket is very different though. Again, it's not always, you can be powerful and be successful, but you can equally be successful as a finesse player and a timing and a technical player. So from that standpoint, what, if anything, about that drew you into the game as somebody who is 4'11"?
So I'm 4'11", and I perceive myself as 6'2". So in my head, I'm I'm a lot taller in my head than I really am. But sometimes I have this depleting thought where if somebody else sees me, they don't take me seriously, or I'm just like a little guy. So I always assume when somebody sees me that they're going to see just a little guy, and that I might not be taken as seriously. So I always feel that I have to prove myself in such a way because of my size. And I'm okay with that. But playing basketball, I played varsity when I was in 9th grade, and I had a lot of tall players, and I knew that I was never going to play professionally as much as I wanted to. So I looked up to like Muncie Bogues. I'm like, well, he can do it. Why can't I? But I was fast, and I just had to work on other things. So I had to be an outside shooter. I just had to be super fast. I had to be strategic, things like that. So, but I didn't realize that with cricket. And I mean, I do know that, like, with our girls, we have all sizes that are playing, and we all have different strengths. And so it doesn't seem to matter there, but I just didn't know if for fielding, for example, I mean, if somebody's hitting a 6 and I'm a little bit taller, maybe I can reach a little bit higher, and I got that going for me. But that's not always the case.
But in terms of, one of the things you said that throughout your life you feel like you've been overlooked, or you feel like you have to play bigger than you are to get noticed or prove yourself. Do you feel that that's
Yeah.
been the case in Minnesota specifically, or in general with cricket, that you feel like you still have to kind of play bigger to get noticed, or do you feel you fit in regardless of your stature on the field?
So our teams have been insane fair. So they get everybody out there. Everybody's getting an opportunity. The folks that maybe still need some development, they get as much play time as anybody else. So it's not so much about who's better, who's not. Everybody pretty much gets a fair shot, and that's where I feel that again that need to just kind of like thank everyone in such a way where for their time and everything is that they've given me opportunities. Like in the very beginning, I just sucked. I wasn't that good at all. I hate to use that word, but they stuck with me, and we stick with other players, and we all kind of developed together in that way. So that's been phenomenal. So I never had that sense. They're always giving me a fair shot. But I was pretty happy though that like last year and then this year when we were doing team selection for other league MTPL, that I was auctioned off and I had pretty good rankings, and I won for quite a bit of money too. So that was kind of, I mean, it was fake money, but it was a big honor.
But
Really
it's
humbling
still
experience.
a measure. You might be fake money, but
They,
it's a measure of what people perceive your value to be and how much they want you, and they're eager to recruit you. That's a pretty good measure.
yeah, it's super fun. So that piece was kind of cool. I mean, we had like fantasy teams and everything, and it's just the coolest experience I've ever been on. Just that again, it just kind of speaks to the community that we have. I mean, everybody's so passionate. It just pulls you in, and then that's where you just wanna keep doing your best.
Well, don't
So I mean,
hide.
and
Now you've
yeah,
opened the can of worms. You can't hold back now. So what did you go for? What is the salary cap budget in this auction, and what did you go for?
my starting bid was 50,000, and I went for 180,000. So that was kind of cool. So and then I got selected by this team called the STEAM Builders or STEM Builders. STEM meaning like education. So we all
Yeah.
have like these different sponsors. So our team is the STEM Builders, and it's kind of an app platform for kids to learn math, science, coding, all that kind of stuff. So not only was I on a kind of a cool team, but it's kind of a neat thing. So yeah, but we had a couple other star players as well that went for a good penny. One of the opposing teams, like Team Legend, for example, there's a girl, Alicia. She's an insane bowler, super fast, super powerful. She's like a strategic fielder as well. I mean, she's yelling at everybody, and it's just when you're playing against her, you're on top of it because she knows you and she kind of gets into your head. And I love her strategy, and her daughter is insane too. Her daughter's super good, and so they're on the same team. So I was on their team last year. We got first place last year. I'm not on their team this year, so now I have some good competition to go for. But we'll play together as well. So she's kind of on our main team, but she's also on her sister team as well. And then we'll be playing them this weekend. So you get these relationships, and yeah.
So Charles Peterson, you said he's your coach. He's one of the people who's
Yeah.
very heavily involved in cricket in Minnesota and the league
Mhm.
there. How would you characterize his impact on your cricket journey?
First of all, he's also a professor at the U of M, so he teaches cricket back home. And some of the players, one of our players, Chantel, she met him. She saw that he had a class. It was like probably like a 1 credit class, and she's like, "Oh, this is easy. I'll take it." She already had experience with cricket. Her father is a referee or an umpire, and she's from Jamaica. So I mean, she's been playing since she was 5. And Charles, he just has been, rallying to get folks to play, young girls, everything else. And one way to describe him is he's incredibly patient, because when we first started playing with him, I was so rusty that he had to show me like a million times again and again and again. And sometimes I'm kind of a hard nut to crack where, I'm listening, but the rest of me is not listening. And eventually I think I might get it. But his instructions have been pretty basic, but profound in the sense that I'm able to kind of build on those things that he's given, because his time is really valuable. And we only see him maybe once a week, and that's if we can make it out to a practice. And we only have so much time. But he's been a huge advocate. And then I think he also helped organize the introduction for us to go down to Texas and play. And he's really trying to build a team here, a leather ball team, and organize matches and events. But I know it's a challenge for him as well, just getting the time and resources, and of course the participation. So I mean, a lot of us have families, work, travel, and so it's still kind of clawing the way into that area. But he's incredibly involved. So and he does it for free. So I mean, there's no like incentive, so to speak, other than, I mean, he's just super passionate and he's out there.
I don't think too many
pulling his
people
weight
are.
and then some.
I don't think too many people are making a heavy buck charging for
Oh,
cricket lessons around America in particular. But
definitely not.
so yes, he's one of many in that regard. But you
No,
said
he's special.
he's people like him are if they're getting you involved and getting other people involved, and again teaching a class at the university, a credit class. This is not an audit class. This is a credit class. You can get credit at the University of Minnesota for going to a class about cricket. Where else can you do that in America? It might be
Go
few
do
places,
it.
but yeah.
No.
So there you for people who are interested, if you want to get university credit for cricket, University of Minnesota is the place to do it. Go to the Twin Cities.
100%.
The Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast is presented by DreamCricket. DreamCricket Store can help you fill up all of your cricket kit requirements. Anything you need: bats, helmets, gloves, pads, jerseys, and more. Go to DreamCricketStore.com now and get 15% off your first order. DreamCricket Store also offers free shipping on all orders over $200. Again, go to www.DreamCricketStore.com to take advantage of that great offer today. This episode of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also sponsored by Moosa Cricket Stadium, the first turf wicket facility in the state of Texas, and now the first ODI-accredited venue in the Lone Star State, located at 5515 McKeever Road, County Road 100 in Pearland, 5 miles off the Bailey Road exit from State Route 288, a half hour south of downtown Houston. Moosa Cricket Stadium includes fully enclosed locker rooms and change rooms, plus shower facilities after a day's play, as well as outdoor nets for all your training needs. Moosa also has 2 nursery grounds on the north side of the stadium boundary available for use. For more information, visit www.moosastadium.com. That's MOOSA Stadium.com. Moosa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas. The Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast is also sponsored by Crickbuster. Based in Florida, Crickbuster is an ICC-designated official travel agent for the 2022 ICC Men's T20 World Cup in Australia. If you're a cricket fan living in the USA and you need match tickets, flights, hotels, stadium tours, or want to organize other sightseeing activities down under this October, Crickbuster is a one-stop shop for all of your touring needs. Visit www.crickbuster.com to begin planning your trip today. And now back to the episode.
So Charles, you also said he's somebody who helped facilitate the opportunity for you down in Texas for the regionals.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the pathway? How did you get involved? Was it specifically on Charles's recommendation, or was there some other way that you were playing in events that would have gotten you recognized to get an invite to go down to Texas for the USA Cricket Women's Regional Tournament?
There might have been other girls that also kind of were involved with that as well, but we had Ashani and Bhavana that had played last year with them, and I think I was approached with that then, but I wasn't ready mentally or anything like that, and I didn't feel that it was appropriate for me to go down. I feel that it was Charles, maybe a few other girls on our team that wanted to go down and represent, but it was just constantly, reaching out to us. Does anybody want to play? I mean, he's always the one that's kind of reaching out, throwing out stuff for us to kind of like a worm on a hook. You want to do this? You want to do that? And it's just like, yeah, I want to do it, but will it work out? So once the opportunity finally came along, we had to get a group of girls, go to practice, get some video of us playing, and it was pretty meager, but I think they just wanted to see if we could play. And
so you weren't the only person.
That video.
So you weren't the only person from Minnesota who. So this starts with the intra-regionals. So before the regionals in Houston that I saw you at, there was the intra-regionals prior to that, which was also in Houston, and you're saying there were multiple girls or women's players from Minnesota or from your club and your league specifically that you were traveling with and playing with that were able to be part of this team.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, Navita and Trujana came down with me, which was great because then I had some girls back home that we went down. We had obviously more girls that wanted to come down, but they had certain reasons where they couldn't come down. And so it was just really the three of us that went down together. And again, it was great. So
So this was a couple weeks prior to the regionals.
mhm.
And how would you evaluate your performance at the intra-regionals in terms of, were you expecting to get an invite? Were you surprised to get an invite? Take us through the process from your performances at the intra-regional event, which then fed into the regional event that you got an invitation to be selected for the Southwest region team.
Well, one, I was happy just to go down and play, and that was my intent, was just to go down and have some experience playing, and that alone was worth it to me. I didn't know how much I was going to play. I didn't really get to bat as much as I wanted to. I think I batted the one evening because our games were pushed because of wonderful weather down in Texas. So it was raining, and we ended up at a different field, and the field wasn't that great. But for me, I don't care. I mean, bring on the bad conditions. I'll play in anything. That's like the least of my concern. I know that when I was batting, I was kind of at the bottom of the lineup, and I remember the wicket keep saying, "Oh, easy wicket," and I looked at her. I'm like, "What?" So I think I hit like 20 some odd points or something like that. My bat was brand new. My bat wasn't properly knocked in or anything like that. So when I did swing and hit, it was so frustrating because it went nowhere. So I finally got out, but I got to play a little bit. And I was playing with one of my girls, Navita, who she's my favorite to play with because we just kind of we communicate really well. I mean, she'll yell at me. She's like, "Go, go, go." So I love that. I'm like, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Let's go. So I'm like, don't leave me. Don't leave me. And so it was really fun to bat with her down there. There's frogs bouncing around the field and everything. So it was just super bizarre, but it was a great night for me anyway. And so I was able to hit a couple balls, but nothing spectacular. So when they were announcing to check your email and all that stuff, I didn't even bother to look because I thought, yeah, I'm not going back. There was other girls that were playing phenomenal that week, so I just wasn't expecting anything. The other two girls didn't get asked to come back, so I just didn't even bother. And then I got a phone call, I think, after I arrived back home, and they said, check your email. And I'm like, I didn't see anything. And turns out that they had the wrong email. And then they're like, yeah, we want you to come back. So I was like, oh, shoot. I get money. And so I'm like, can I do this? Can I do this? I didn't even know if it was going to work out because the day that I had to leave, it was my daughter's birthday. And so I was going to miss out on that again, because the first time I was down, I missed her birthday. So we rescheduled her birthday party later in that month. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I got to leave during her birthday party. I'm like, can I do this? And I had so much other stuff going on with work. So there were so many times where I'm just like, no, this isn't worth it. I'm just not going to do it. And then I think they did say something on the lines of, you're not guaranteed to play, but, we'd like you to be there. So my husband was super supportive. He's like, you just got to do it. He's like, if you don't do it, you're going to regret it later. And so I'm like, all right, fine. So we just made it work and went down again. So I know Rashina Paul was working very close with us in that whole process. And then once that kind of happened, and then she kind of phased out because her job was done. And so, but being alone the second time, it was kind of like, all right, so see what happens.
This is Snigda's mom, or is this some other?
Yeah.
Snigda's mom. Okay.
Yeah. Snigs.
Snigda's mom is, so Rashna is one of the regional coordinators, regional USA Cricket women's volunteer coordinators, who's down in based in Texas. So she was the one who was trying to facilitate all this, trying to coordinate the players to come into Texas.
Yeah, she was working her tail off.
So did you wind up staying for the birthday party, or did you have to leave early, or what happened in terms of flights or drive? Did you fly down? Did you drive down? I don't even know that part of the story. How did you get to Texas?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so our neighborhood is a pretty tight community. So we had actually two other girls with a birthday. So we coordinated a birthday party with three girls, and I rescheduled the time so that after the event was over, I was already packed and ready to go. And then I left immediately after the party, airport. Yeah, there's no driving. That's a long drive. But I was happy to get back down to Buc-ee's. That place is crazy. The gas station down in Texas. My friends think I'm crazy. I'm like, Buc-ee's, that's the best place ever. I was looking forward to that. No, but yeah, so I left the birthday party right away. I was just in and out. but I was able to be here long enough to be checked in and, present for everything. But it was just back to back crazy chaos, starting a new job. So I was training for that. So I'm just kind of like, okay, today I'm focused on this. Today I'm focused on this. And that's where a lot of the kind of not regret, I was disappointed that I wasn't able to fully focus on practicing at home or just preparing myself physically for play, because there was really no opportunity to do that. We've had a couple options to practice, but we had things going on. So I was just kind of coming in raw.
When you got to Texas, what was your expectation for that tournament? You said Rachna told you over the phone or beforehand in the build-up that there was no guarantee you would get to do anything. But my understanding was that the coaches were all told and specifically communicated to all the coaches, both verbally and in WhatsApp texts, that because all the players are paying their own way, everybody has to bat at least once, and or everybody has to bowl at least once, because again, USA Cricket was not footing the bill for this, even though it was a USA Cricket branded event. It was the players, because for a variety of reasons, USA Cricket just doesn't have the money, and the players themselves, if they want to come, they're basically told you got to foot the bill. But there's there's a reciprocal understanding there that because you are paying your own way, it's not necessarily a win at all costs, and we're going to be picking the best players in the best positions at all times. There's a developmental aspect to it where we want to see where everybody stands. We want to get a chance to evaluate everybody. And so we're taking more of a developmental approach rather than win. And everybody's going to get a chance to play. So from that standpoint, what was communicated to you in that regard before the start of the event? And did your expectations change from what you were initially told, I guess, from Rachna Paul, in terms of you may or may not get a chance between then and when you actually got there before you took the field for the first time on day one?
Yeah. So I guess I had this impression that I may not get to play. I think and it wasn't a formal communication, but that's where, this mindset of, well, what if, and I've always had this what if, well, okay, fine, I got this opportunity, there's a door open, I'm going to get through it, now or never kind of thing. So if great, if I don't get to play, well, at least I gave it my best shot with what was in my control, and so I kept practicing and everything. I was just all in, doing the best I could just to kind of show that I can move, I'm capable. So up until the very last day, I still had the, maybe. So, at the end, I was a little disappointed. Thanks for the wonderful. By the way, it was like the end of a hot day. It was like 100 degrees out and I was pretty tired. It was a big bummer. I was under the impression that it wasn't guaranteed. And again, it wasn't a formal communication. I don't even remember where it came from, but I did have this mindset of I may not get to play, but if I do get to play, I'm just going to do the best I can. So even when it came to practice, I would just go all in and just be there. But I was able to field. That was great. I was able to kind of participate that way. And because I feel like every player has a value, whether they're batting, bowling, or fielding, those are all areas that you can excel at and support the team. So, and that was my other mindset as well, is there's a lot of girls that were younger than me that have already played, and I knew that some of them were going to be selected. So I didn't want to get in the way of that either. So when, for example, I wasn't in a lineup or I wasn't playing that game that day, I kind of took it as, that was a bummer for me, but I didn't want to be greedy, because there was girls that probably can really excel in the future, that they have the chance to showcase their skills. And so I was hoping just to be supportive in that way as well. So, just me being there representing Minnesota was huge for me. But obviously, that disappointment's there, because it's like I wasn't able to kind of show what I had to offer. I have a lot of people back home that, why didn't you play? Where are you? What time are you going to be playing today? Because everybody back home was dialed in. They're watching online every single day, waiting. And so I felt bad for them as well. And we can't communicate while we're playing, because, they take their phones. So there's no communication. So they're waiting. So they're checked in for those 3 to 4 days. And so I just got nothing for them. So there was that disappointment. But I'm like, well, maybe. And they said, well, maybe you're going to play. So I'm telling everybody else maybe. And so I felt like I let a lot of other people down. So it wasn't so much, my ego saying, well, how come I didn't get to play? It was, well, maybe it was because of this, maybe it was because of that, maybe that they needed a certain player for a certain situation. I wish we would have won a game, then I would have felt better. But we didn't win any games. So I'm like, well, I didn't participate in those wins, but I felt that, maybe I could have helped a little bit. But so you got all these things that going on at the same time. And yeah.
From the context afterward, learning that you were literally the only player who did not get to do batting or bowling, what was your reaction upon coming to that realization?
Oh, I was ready to go home. It was a long week. So, I mean, I spent 2 weeks away from my home, spent a lot of money, which is fine. I mean, I went in with my eyes wide open, but yeah, I mean, there's a big level of disappointment. Yeah, a lot of, I felt pretty drained about it. But after coming home, I did have overwhelming support, and I wasn't expecting that. So I think a lot of that kind of carried me through and kind of brought me back up again. But I didn't want that to take away. I didn't want it to be a negative anyway for anybody, because my whole intention for going down was to be positive, not just for myself, but, again, for everybody back home. And so that's where I kind of really felt this unfulfilled mission that I had. So that was kind of lingering, and it's still kind of there. But, we always want to do well, and that's just the way it goes. But, if it's not that, it's an injury or something like that too. So, I mean, this is how it kind of came out.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to go over about that. You talked about the positive response you got from back home, and I do want to touch on that. But first, you had sent me a message afterwards, and after I had made the post on Facebook about what had happened. And in part of your message, you said you interpreted you're not being given a chance to bat or bowl. This is what you texted me. You said you felt that it was because, quote, I didn't try hard enough or I play well enough for that short period of time. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God. Like, it hit me right here. Like, oh Jesus, like, I can't believe like Crystal is thinking this, that, you've got such a positive viewpoint and very sincere viewpoint, but I just felt like, oh, I felt like you had been seriously wronged, and you took it literally in terms of a competitive standpoint. Well, I must not have gotten picked because coaches thought I wasn't good enough, when in reality, the information I had, what was communicated to all the coaches, was that no, it wasn't meant to be about we want to pick the best 11 at all times. It was, we want to make sure everybody gets a chance, and you didn't get a chance. The overriding thought from my mind when I left that event was about you specifically was, I don't know how Crystal could have batted, and I would have loved to find out if she'd gotten a chance. Could she have come in, if she opened the batting, if she came in 5, 6, 8, whatever, would she have hit a boundary off the first ball? Would she have been blocking like a lot of the other players were? Would she have been swinging and missing? I don't know. And that was my frustration, that it's hard for me to form an opinion about how you played or what you were capable of, simply because there was this great unknown. We never knew, because we never got to see. And that was my own frustration in covering the event. Or if you take it from a selector's perspective, if this is an event where everybody is supposed to get a chance to be evaluated, well, how on earth would a selector have been able to evaluate you if they never got a chance to see what you were capable of? And that was my great frustration. And then to read your text and to see you say, well, I must not have gotten picked because they thought I wasn't good enough, I just thought that really cut me. As a neutral person, as an outsider, I thought, oh Jesus, like I can't believe Crystal's thinking this, that you were, like I said, I felt you were wronged, and you're still thinking like, nah, it's okay, I probably wasn't picked because it wasn't good enough. So from the standpoint of that, were you honestly told by anybody, by the coach or the captain, that I'm not picking you or you're not batting here because you're not good enough? Or did you just form that opinion on your own based on the kind of unspoken message of where you were being placed?
Yeah, as far as communication, there wasn't a whole lot. It was, they read off the list of who's playing or who was actually participating in the game. And I thought maybe I'd get the T40, but because it was a longer game, but it was just your name's not called, and that was it. So no really explanation as far as that goes. So, the way that I interpret things is like, well, I just got to do better. I'm just not displaying enough. And it was a little difficult because we didn't have a whole lot of practice time. I mean, I did form some assumptions. The team knew each other. A lot of the teammates knew each other. They had a history. So they kind of felt comfortable in that space. Of course, the coach didn't know anyone, so he didn't have a lot of background to go by. So I just kind of assumed that familiarity was a big driver in that selection process. The final day, we did have a little opportunity to hit the batting cages. I know that wasn't, not everybody wanted to hit the batting cages that day. They just wanted to play, but I really wanted to, because I figured if I didn't go in the cages, at least then I wouldn't have any chance to practice. So I was super all in on that one. And then I was able to finally bowl just a little bit back there. But again, it's like, I haven't had a chance to play for a couple weeks. And so I was pretty rusty. So it's like, okay, well, if I don't play 100% during practice, maybe that could be a part of the reason why. But, I did feel a little overlooked. But again, I kind of assumed, well, I'm just this outsider coming down. I almost felt like it was kind of they just needed to fill a space. So I was just there kind of filling the space.
Did anybody speak up on your behalf, either on the second day or the third day in particular, the third and final match day, to try and speak up for you? You didn't strike me as somebody, when I was around the team, well, I would say nobody, it didn't seem like a team setting where people were going to be jumping up and down, chatting for themselves. I want to do this, I want to do that. It seemed like it was left to the captain and the coach to kind of decide things. But did anybody speak up on your behalf to say, well, Crystal hasn't gotten an opportunity yet, why isn't she getting one, and maybe she should be batting up the order today or given an opportunity? Did anybody do anything like that?
Yeah, a couple of girls did. I know I think I was at the bottom of the list on the last day, or somewhere near the bottom. I didn't really know the whole order, but I think it was Tia that had offered up her spot. She's like, why don't you move up to my position in the lineup and play? But by then, I think there's no way I would have played because we were so far down. So so one of the players did offer that spot, which was very uncomfortable for me, because again, I don't think a player should have to make that choice, and then I don't want to have to be the one to take that spot either. I would rather have had it kind of already determined, because it just puts me in a weird spot, and then I don't want to have that. I mean, I don't mind having pressure, but it's just a weird pressure to have. So I mean, I really appreciated it that she was offering up that place, but I don't want to get something out of pity. I want it to be because it's earned, or
right,
if there's a valid reason behind it. So that was just kind of weird. And again, it wasn't for lack of appreciation, because I think it was completely there. But I was more hoping for an actual strategy overall on that, and it wasn't quite there. So there was a little bit of confusion on leadership, I think.
When you say confusion on leadership, who did you feel should have taken more responsibility in that situation, the captain or the coach, or both, or somebody else in that regard? Do you think somebody from USA Cricket who was overseeing the event should have stepped in if they were kind of aware of what was going on?
Well, that's not for me to say. I do know that they had team meetings beforehand, and the players usually aren't involved in that. So as far as leadership goes, to have a cohesive mission and understanding for everyone, I think that's just assumed, at least for me. And then having that strategy, of course, a lot of people are playing with a coach maybe that they don't have experience with, because you still have to get to know the players. So they might, I'm not sure if there's like a lack of gelling of that relationship. So I can't speak to it. I don't know, and I don't want to say either, because it's just I just trust that people were making the decisions that they did based on what they felt was right, because I know that the captain had her role into producing a good group and strategy to play. I know the coach, I don't quite understand what the role was for him as far as his say in the overall process. I know in the field, the captain is she's calling the shots, doing the very best that she can, as we all are. And again, as a player, I put faith in that leadership, and it's not for me to question. So I can only hope that, those things are kind of taken into account. But again, it's a learning process for everybody.
You talked about it being a learning process for everybody and for you specifically about what had happened. I mean, based on the experience that you had in Texas, especially on that second weekend or the second week, I guess, with the regionals, and knowing that you paid out of pocket, would you ever consider going back to a USA Cricket tournament like that ever again?
That would be a hard maybe because it was a lot of effort to get down there, and the stars were aligned for me to go this last time. I just want to play, so I really don't have any overall intentions. I want to play, I want to represent. If the opportunity comes again, a big maybe. I've had people reach out to me, East Coast, West Coast, to come play for them. I don't have any affiliation with anyone. I would love to see Minnesota and the Northwest region, or North Central region, I guess, to bring our own group. So I would rather have that. I would rather represent up here than go down, because then we have our own community, our own developmental team, and play that way. So yes, maybe, but I can't speak to other players and how they've viewed my experience and how they would want to go down, because they would be nervous, because some other people can't take that type of risk, either financially or with time. If you look at it that way, it's a big maybe. So it's like, well, would that happen to me again? I've heard stories of other players where they didn't quite get the experience that they wanted, or they felt that they weren't heard maybe. So me being an American, I've kind of got this feedback of, well, if it was me, somebody else, they probably would have just ignored the whole situation. They would just kind of brush it under the table. But me being who I am, and as an American, maybe drawing out a little more visibility, I guess you want to say. So I take that into consideration as well. It's like, well, it is what it is. But again, I would prefer to have our own region represented, and I'd rather play for our own region and, show everyone what we have here. But until then, we do the best we can in other locations.
Now you said
so that's not a non-answer.
No, but it makes sense. I think part of the reason that factored into it, you touched on in multiple ways. You were going out essentially to play for what was a Texas team. All the players there were from either Houston or Dallas, essentially, with the exception of yourself, and the familiarity that they had with each other. I've had a bunch of people say to me, "Oh, this is proof that there are a bunch of racists down there," and I don't feel that. And I've been in similar situations where I'm the only white guy on the team, and I've had other guests on who are the only white person in the team. Jason Fox is somebody in Kansas growing up playing for USA under 15 teams and regional teams in the Central East region, and talks about his experiences in one of the previous episodes I did where I interviewed him, and he said, yeah, it can be awkward being the only white person from a cultural dynamic, but he didn't ever feel like when he was overlooked or neglected or didn't get paid. At least talking to him and talking to other people, the general consensus is they don't feel like there's racist element to it, but there's definitely a sense of people looking out for their own. So if it's a Texas-based team, they're going to tend to favor the Texas-based players, or if it's a Florida-based team or California-based team, they're going to look out for people in San Francisco, or they're going to look out for people in Los Angeles. And that's if they just also happen to be ethnically Indian or ethnically West Indian or ethnically something else, that's just a byproduct of that. But I've never felt personally like there's a racial element to it. I felt like it was more the fact that because you were from Minnesota, and if your teammates from Minnesota had also come down who are ethnically Indian, there's a high probability that they probably might have faced the same situation, because they're essentially the outsiders in that team entering Texas where they're not being represented. Whereas you said, if you've got a team that's Minnesota centric, that's represented by Minnesota, and everybody who's in the coaching setup or the administration and the selection and whatever is all Minnesota based or familiar with each other, then this kind of thing is probably less likely to happen in the future. So from that standpoint, what you said, if you wanted to represent a Minnesota team going forward, you would be much more likely to do that, which makes sense. And from that standpoint too, you talked about the support you received. Now you said you got a lot of support back home after you came back home, and invitations to go out to the East Coast, the West Coast. And I posted what I posted on Facebook, which it might be the most popular, for lack of a better word, post I've ever had on my page in a decade's worth of reporting on U.S. cricket. A decent post for me might get 100 likes or responses and maybe 20 or 30 comments. This post somehow went viral and got more than 1,200 reactions. It had more than 120 shares. It has more than 400 comments on it. I've never had a reaction to this post of all the things I've covered in international cricket, whether it's Nepal or Afghanistan, which have huge fan followings, or U.S. national team matches internationally. Crystal Zins is the post that got the biggest reaction around the world. And it wasn't just people from America. There are people from all around the world who were reacting with outrage about what happened to you, but also, like you said, support. I can't believe how many responses I got from people, whether locally, Bert Cockley, who's been affiliated with IPL teams and played for New South Wales and is now based in Texas and coaching. He said he met you and he had a great experience interacting with you. And that
was amazing.
That got a huge reaction. But then also people, I made a list. There's invitations. I don't know if you saw it through all the comments, but there's invitations from people from Yorkshire and Melbourne down to Victoria and Cambridge in the UK and other parts of Melbourne. There's multiple people from Melbourne and Yorkshire as well, and Cornwall in the UK, and a cricket club in Kent and a cricket club in Coogee in outside of Sydney in New South Wales. All these people from around the world were extending you invitations saying, Crystal, come on down to Coogee, to New South Wales, come to Yorkshire, come to Cambridge, come to Cornwall, come to Melbourne. Like, anytime you're here, you've got an open invitation. You can play for us. So in terms of the positive element of the reaction that you got, what did that mean to you? And how did you kind of interpret all these messages and feedback that was coming in your way in that regard, whether locally from within Minnesota or from way beyond?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting any of that. I was actually just online looking for photos just to share with my friends back home of our experience down there. So when I saw it, I was like, what is this? And I didn't even actually check in. I didn't even read the entire piece because blacked out of, whoa, where did that come from? Because again, I took the entire thing personally. I'm like, this is something that I just didn't do. So I wasn't prepared for that type of feedback and viewpoint. So, but then I had to step back a little bit because it's not my personality to, again, not wanted to make anything out of a negative, but, thinking to myself, how can I make this into a positive for my folks back home? And that's when I started getting responses back from my folks back home. And so, yeah, again, a lot of people reaching out. The ones that really stuck out to me, though, were the ones where they would say something like, that's cricket. Welcome to cricket. I remember playing 5 or 6 games and not being on the list once, stuff like that, so I took those comments to note as well. And I know that everybody's coming from a different space and a different viewpoint. So I was kind of having an open mind of where these comments were coming from and what they meant. And it was actually heartfelt because knowing that there's kids out there that are looking for an opportunity and they're being overlooked. And that's where it's like, you want everybody to get a chance. You never know. I mean, I was watching on the plane back home from Massachusetts. What was it? The Natural. Have you ever seen that baseball movie?
Of course. Robert Redford is a classic.
Yeah. I was like, it's like you give somebody a shot. You just don't know. And I mean, so I just think it's just an example of, there could be another kid just like me. And you kind of roll the dice, you just don't know, but having a little bit of faith in people. But so I don't know where a lot of the comments were kind of coming from, but it was just a huge, overwhelming, and I tried answering as many as I could too, because when somebody reaches out to me, I'm not going to just kind of ghost somebody. I tried reaching out to as many as I could. And some of them I just thought they're just kind of, come on out. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. Are you serious? So, I mean, coming out to Australia, I've told a few people, I said, I've always wanted to go to Australia. My elementary school, we had a principal from our sister school in Australia visit. I think I was in 4th grade. And that sparked my interest to always wanting to go. But unfortunately, he never talked about cricket. So, and I still have that picture in my yearbook. So I'm like, it is time for me to get out there. But, my former boss, he would tell me stories of being in Australia playing cricket in the hallways of the office. Like, people play all over the place. So, but it just kind of speaks to the passion of the sport. And one person in particular, Andrew Agernam, I'm not sure he reached out to you.
Yeah.
He's from Victoria, Australia. Yeah, he took it one step further. He's actually sending me something. It should be arriving on Friday. I don't know what he's sending me. It might be a kit or something. I don't know. But he's sending something to me, and I'm like, oh wow. I mean, I don't deserve that kind of thing. I'm just out there just wanting to play. So I really appreciate everybody's feedback, but it's just like, yeah.
He has sworn me to secrecy.
You know,
I'm not allowed to say what it is, but you'll see it when it comes.
yeah. So whatever it is, it's like, yeah, I'm excited. I mean, who doesn't love, when FedEx or somebody comes to the front door? I mean, you get a little excited. So it's like Christmas time. So I'm pretty excited a little bit. That's just in my nature. I'm a girl. I like to shop. So I don't know. But huge shout out to him though, just for reaching out and and him and everybody else just for their support. I know Emily Reynolds, I think she might have reached out to you as well. She just kind of offered up her voice a little bit. So I mean, it wasn't so much about what happened, but it's just that to being heard and seen, that as well, that meant a lot to me as well. So because I wasn't expecting anything, I was just kind of hoping to crawl under a hole and just fade out. And it didn't work out that way. So, but you still didn't get as many views as my cats. My niece did a TikTok of my cats one time, and she got 15 million hits.
Well,
So
anything
so
that's got anything with a dog or cat in it is bound to get. I mean, the biggest cricket photo in terms of impressions and reach that I've ever taken was a dog running onto a cricket field to stop play. So anything with a dog or cat is bound to get all the hits. Yeah, if I could blend a cat video with cricket, that would be by far my
priceless
traffic driver, anything in history,
Oh
I'm sure. So, but one of the things
yeah.
on a serious note that you touched on, you said, oh, some of the comments you saw were, oh, well, that's cricket. This happens, or it's happened to me too.
Yeah.
It's happened to me, but
Yeah.
in club cricket, it's happened to me where I've had to drive 10 minutes for a match, and I've played, and we go out there, and yeah, we might bet down to 7 or 8, and if I was due to come in at 8 or whatever, or a few times, I'm typically a second 11 player for my club, but the few times where I've been asked to play in the first 11, it's with the understanding that I'm filling in for somebody. Somebody's dropped out late and they need me to field. They need a good fielder, so I'm being asked to go field in the first 11. But more or less, it's with the understanding you're not gonna bowl, and there's probably a good chance you're not gonna get the bat. But do you want to come play for the first 11? Yes. It's a 10-minute drive. There's a big difference between that, a 10-minute drive, versus flying 1,100 miles and paying out of pocket. There's a big difference between paying for 10 minutes of worth of gas, 3 or 4 mile drive of gas, which might be 50 cents of gas, versus paying for a plane ticket and hotel rooms and not getting a chance to play, and somebody saying, well, that's cricket. No, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the frustration I had in terms of, as an outsider, seeing somebody get treated in that way. But of all the things you said and you talked about, the response in a lot of ways was very, very positive. What for you has been the biggest positive to come out of this entire experience that happened in Texas for you?
Well, the group of girls that we played with, they're all phenomenal athletes. So they were probably my number one positive experience, just watching them play and how they played, how their mindset was. You just kind of fed off that energy. So that was in of itself totally worth it. I mean, it was just great being around those guys. Again, just being on the field, just experiencing what it's like to play a proper game, that was just mint right there. You can't really get that back home yet. And I say yet because I feel that we're getting there. But just to be in that space, it really kind of fed this desire that I had to be a part of it. But it also kind of drove me to, like, I want more. We come back home, we play a T20. I'm like, can we play T40? I mean, this isn't enough time to play. I just want to keep playing. I don't want to stop. So, and that's the other drive of doing well, because if you do well, you get to play more. If you get to play more, you get better, you get more challenged, more experience. So still hungry in that respect. So it was like a taste, but it didn't quite scratch that itch. So it's this incomplete feeling, I guess, but still grateful for those opportunities as well, because I wasn't my expectations are pretty low. So I was just kind of up to go from there, and just being down in Texas and experiencing that different weather, compared to what we have back home, that was a whole different ballpark as well. I could see how you acclimate over time. I was still working on that, but yeah. And and coming back home, it's like, well, how can we replicate that here? What can I bring that I learned down there back home? So there's plenty of unfinished business, but I think that's just the way it is. Always that growth opportunity.
One more question before we get to the favorite 11. Your family.
Okay.
I've not asked you this. So your family, whether it's your husband, your kids, your brother, anybody else in your extended family, what do they think of your fascination and passion for cricket? Is this Crystal being a bit of a crazy person, or is this like, wow, this is amazing? Or what is their general reaction?
Yeah, no, I'm crazy. I think sometimes they don't know when to take me seriously because I'm always kind of a what if, or let's do this, let's do that. I don't like to hear the word no very often. So it's, I think of Tim Gunn, make it work. So the second I have my sights on something, I really like to go for it. And I kind of go in blindly and maybe a little naive, but I go all in. So a lot of my family members know to kind of get out of my way. My husband's been super supportive, so he's been helpful in making things work out. My siblings, they think it's pretty cool, but they still don't quite understand. They have their own busy lives to worry about. So at the end of the day, it's really just kind of me fighting to get some play in. So if I want to go to practice, it's kind of a negotiation, a daily negotiation. Can I make practice this day? Can you watch the kids this day? Can I get here this day? Can I borrow some money? Because it's a little bit out of my means for this or whatever. So I'd like to think that they're supportive, but I'm also very annoying. So it's like, because I want more. And it's okay. So it's constantly negotiating what I can get away with. But I really just kind of pick my battles. And there's been a lot of times where I've had to turn some stuff down. I wanted to go down to play Missouri over Labor Day weekend. I had an invite from them, and that's just not in the cards for me right now. It's too close to the last two trips. So for me, it's just like I'm bummed because I really want to go down and play, but I think that there might be other opportunities in the future. But I just don't like to say no if it's available, and that whole what if. So if somebody else asked me to come down somewhere, if I get a chance to play, that'd be awesome. So I might not play my best, or I might, whatever I can offer, I'm all in. So, but, and that's not just me. I think that's a lot of people. If they can do it, they'll do it.
What is your favorite part about cricket that makes you have this passion for the game?
The end of the game. I want to do it again. It's like I used to do triathlons, and the whole process of a triathlon was just excruciating. I hate running. I'm not a very good swimmer. I like to bike, but it's just physically challenging. But at the end of the game, or at the end of the race, I'll look back at my numbers and I'll say, oh, I could have done my transition a little bit better. I could have done this better. So, I'm still like recovering physically, practically starving, losing like 10 pounds after the race. But I'll look at it and say, oh, I could have done that better. I'll sign up for another one. So I don't know what kind of torture I like to put myself in, but cricket is just, it's like this mental, this mental game where I have so many things to manage and think about and play. And I have all these voices in my head of do this, don't do this, make sure you do this, don't do this again. I do all the things. I might do a few things right. If I hit a couple sixes, I mean, the sixes are just like, I want more of that. And hearing that crack of the bat, it just kind of feeds that monster, I guess, inside. I just want to I want more. So it's just the whole entire game. Even if after a bad game, especially a bad game, if I didn't do well, I need to rectify that and do it all over again and just kind of prove myself.
All right. Favorite 11 time. 11 questions. Cricket and non-cricket. Are you ready, Crystal?
I am as ready as I can go. Yeah.
Your favorite roommate on any cricket tour you've had? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a cricketer. Who was your favorite roommate?
Oh, my niece, Angel. She's amazing.
Your niece,
she's my gym rat.
And she's come with you on cricket tours and been your roommate.
Yeah, she's a good supporter.
Your favorite thing about ice fishing in Minnesota?
Well, it's not the beer. It's not the cold. It's not catching fish. Leaving at the end of it, going back into a warm place. That stuff is cold. I mean, they get fancy. I mean, these ice houses, they have fireplaces, they have curtains, all that kind of stuff. My ice fishing experiences were horrible. My brothers on the 6th can of beer, and he's got his little game of checkers on the side. My fingertips, I can't feel. I have frostbite everywhere. It's horrible, but it's still fun. It's a rite of passage for sure.
Your favorite thing to do to pass the time on a long haul flight?
Oh, well, this last time it was I decided to read The Hobbit. So I've read that a long time ago, and I decided to read it again. It was a light book. I didn't want to take anything heavy. So usually reading. I know I'm lame. I read like everybody else.
Your favorite cricket ground experience that you've had as a player or as a fan?
Shoot, Musa Stadium was for sure. That was nice. That just felt great. I mean, you skid on your knees, you don't feel a thing. I mean, you fall, it's no big deal. So, I mean, you could dive and roll, and it's like carpet. So, yeah, definitely Musa Stadium.
Your favorite cricketer of all time?
Sniggs, USA, yeah, Sniggs. She's pretty awesome. She's fun to watch.
Snigg DePaul. Yeah, she's player of the tournament at the Nationals. She's a rising star, Snigg DePaul. All right, we'll take that answer, Snigg DePaul. Your favorite non-cricket athlete of all time?
Give me a second. Kirby Puckett.
Now that's how we know you're from Minnesota.
Yeah, I gotta pick a Minnesota guy.
Your favorite?
He was awesome. He was super fun to watch.
Yeah, well, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's now no longer with us. Your favorite place to eat out on tour?
Oh, Nobu. Somebody else is paying.
All right. Your favorite beverage of any kind, alcoholic or non-alcoholic? Favorite beverage?
I like kombucha. Kombucha or ginger beer.
Your favorite pizza topping?
Not pineapple, but black olives.
Not just olives, black olives.
Yeah, black olives.
Okay.
Gotta be black olives, not Kalamata. Yeah, don't get me started on pineapple.
Your favorite movie of all time?
Clue. I don't know why. It's nostalgic.
Your favorite show to binge watch, whether it's on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, DVD box set. What's your show that when you come across it, you can't turn it off? You got to watch it through to the end with whatever episode's gone.
One I can't quite pronounce, but I think I'll go. Well, right now, Stranger Things.
There you have it, Crystal Zins. Crystal, thank you so much for coming on Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast. I'll give you the final word. Anything else you want to say about yourself that you think people should know about you that they don't already know about you or your cricket journey?
No, just thank you a million for having me. Thanks to everybody that's been kind of reaching out, and hi to everybody. But big shout out to NTPL, Minnesota Cricket over here, back home. And if you want to donate to any fun charity, Vibra, VIBHA, helping kids across the sea, getting food and stuff. So yeah, thanks so much, Peter. You've been amazing. I love your shirt. Got to get to Hawaii. Makes me want to go there right now. I miss Maui.
Well, I want to go there right now. Who wouldn't want to go there right now?
Yeah. My feet miss the ocean already, so I mean that's where I belong.
I don't know too many people who would have walked away from what happened in Texas if it had happened to them and would have seen it as a positive experience in their lives. But Crystal Zins is one such person, and that's why she's such an awesome person in the U.S. cricket community. She's an eternal optimist and is somebody who hopefully will continue to contribute. Keep your eyes peeled for her because she is somebody who's going to be on the scene. I have a very good feeling for many, many years to come. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast on Patreon. Become an eagle, become a captain, become a patriot for as little as $3 a month. Everybody who contributes on Patreon and signs up to subscribe on there helps keep the podcast running on an episode-by-episode basis. So I appreciate everybody who has already done so. And I also want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube if you enjoy the video version, or if you enjoy the audio version, you can subscribe on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor FM, and many other podcasting platforms. That's it for this episode. I'm Peter Dahlpenner, reminding everybody, God bless America, and God bless American cricket.